Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. Podcasts everywhere, Facebook, YouTube, and www.talklawradio.com. Just wanted to let you know that our website, talklawradio.com, had some changes made to it to make it easier for you to connect with me, whether you want to be a sponsor or a guest, or whether you just have a question. You can do that online at talklawradio.com. Just click Ask a Question button and type your name and your question, and I'll see it on my phone, and I can answer when I receive it if I'm able to, but there's no guarantee because the only guarantees in life are death and taxes. Also wanted to get into the rule changes that were made to what it means to be a frame or receiver. So Adam, tell us how this affects your work and how it affects your clients and customers to have the ATF to redefine what a frame and receiver is.
I think it threw out a lot of just cloudiness. So many unknowns of, well, what is the ATF expecting now, but what could it possibly be expecting in a year? And so I had a lot of people that about the time that, the 80% lowers and everything we're getting focused on, I had a lot of people stock up and just whether they were going to do anything about it now, a lot of people in this area seem to bite up, set them aside, just because of all the unknowns with that. I don't have too many people wanting them worked on now because they know that if they bring it in, me being a manufacturer, I'm going to have to engrave it and put serial number and everything on it. And most people just don't want the ATF or any government agency knowing what they're doing.
Right.
Rightfully so.
So I wanted to let the audience know what the definition was. In 1978, the ATF had a rule interpreting the phrase frame or receiver. The rule defined the frame or receiver of a firearm as a part of a firearm which provides housing for the hammer, bolt, or breech block and firing mechanism, and which is usually threaded at its forward portion to receive the barrel. That was from 1978, and that definition remained in place until this year. And the way that it was changed is they're now calling the frame and the receiver something that a projectile can come out of.
Yeah, the part they threw in there that may readily be converted to something that is, it's very ambiguous, to where, okay, what is may readily be converted to a firearm? Do you need a jig? Do you need a lathe? Do you need a drill? It's all that just left everybody kind of guessing a little bit, and that's where the 80% lowers frames that people were able to purchase at the time kind of helped out with that. But at the same time, I think that made the government nervous because also now, they're not able to conduct traces on something that they were able to take from, something they picked up at a crime. What really seemed to throw it off was, they classify these ghost guns, is the definitions of those things. They didn't just take something that may readily be able to be converted, but they also were mixing in firearms that their serial numbers were scratched off. So the numbers that they have for a lot of this stuff, it's tough to know what is something that somebody made in their garage and what is something that was already illegally acquired and just serial number was scratched.
Right. So some of my audience probably doesn't know what we're talking about yet.
Okay.
But there's interchangeable terms. One is ghost gun, one is unserialized firearm, one is a privately made firearm. It's probably all the same thing. Describe what the 80% lower means. It's a 3D printed type plastic, maybe.
Some can be. It can also be a block of aluminum. I mean, it's really, you could take say a lower receiver for an AR-15 and just not have the trigger group housing area milled out. Well, if you have a jig that can help you kind of align all that and mill all that out, that was their idea of, we're going to get to 80% of the way, and then somebody can finish the other 20%, drill the holes that they need to be able to put in a trigger and hammer and everything. So the question, though, is, okay, at what point, is it readily, easy to put something together? You have to, of course, have some kind of competency. That rules out a lot of people.
The ATF said that one of these privately made firearms could be finished in 30 minutes. It's
maybe
if you were
you might be able to drill some holes in 30 minutes, but for it to be properly working and functioning in a safe manner and a repeatable manner, that's where the competency comes in, and it's all that is up to interpretation.
Yeah.
And so that's tough to rule on legally.
If they had a professional, maybe they could get it done in that amount of time.
Yes, if you're set up for it and you have the ability, machines and everything to do that, sure, but at that point, there's already so many rules behind it, especially on my end.
So the upper part of a semi-automatic pistol, is that the part that would normally have a serial number or no? No,
so the part that, say on a pistol, so your slide, your barrel, firing pin, sights, and all that stuff, most of those are interchangeable. What they wanted to regulate was the frame. Now you could have a frame that would not have the holes drilled out, where they need to be, in the proper location, and you would have certain spots that would prevent you from putting the slide on, where it wouldn't go on at all unless you milled off certain spots, and so there's that knowledge of knowing what those certain spots are, and what you can't take off, what you can take off. You take off too much also, and it won't work at all. So there's that fine line, and you had companies that were making it a little bit easier for people to do that with certain tools, and I think that got them nervous in the sense of now you don't need as much technical expertise to be able to do that. Okay.
And so the frame part, the receiver, that's probably a common person would identify that as the part that you hold in your hand.
Yes. So the frame, whether it's on an AR-15, the receiver is what holds all the trigger, and the hammer setup for a receiver. But a frame also on a pistol is the same thing, and then it's holding the trigger portion, and it's holding the hammer, and what it takes in order for it to ignite. Now your barrel and everything on an AR-15 and a pistol, they're separate. So to be able for them to regulate just the frame and receiver, that's their point that they kind of focus on right there and make sure that that's serialized, but that's tracked.
In the past, it wasn't illegal for somebody to buy one of these unfinished frames and to finish it themselves. You don't have to have a federal license.
No, for the longest time, if you wanted to make something at your house for yourself, for your own use, there was nothing governing that whatsoever. The problem they ran into is now, you would have people that would have a build party, so to say, and would kind of walk people through some of the more simple processes, I guess, and that's where things, got them stirred up.
You can't build something for somebody else.
Right, and that's where recently they've...
Because you'd have to have that manufacturer's license.
That's it. If you're turning around and making something for somebody else and possibly making a profit off of it, and that's where they just keep redefining these terms of, Well, at what point, what is the drawing line that now you're a manufacturer, now you need to be an FFL, versus somebody that was just making things in their garage for themselves?
Yeah. And one of the other parts of the rule that probably affects you is the rule change where you don't just have to keep your records of sales for 20 years. You have to keep your records as long as you have your FFL.
Yes, that was one of those past 20 years. If you want to get rid of your records, you were able to. What you're seeing a lot of happen right now is the Biden ATF is going after FFLs and getting and dinging them for smaller infringements, whether it's paperwork issues, something wasn't done right on paperwork, whatever, and they're getting people to basically give up their FFLs. And in doing that, they're able to take that entire FFLs, whether they've been around for 4 years or 40 years, they're able to get all their records pretty much immediately. And that has a lot of people kind of scared right now, where they're like, okay, what's going on? We've got to, yes, of course, you always have to dot your I's, cross your T's as an FFL, but, they're taking the smallest infractions and getting all that information.
And the regular freedom-loving firearm owner doesn't really want to be on a government list.
Right. Yeah, and that's the less the government knows about what's going on in our personal lives, the better. And that, especially when it comes to firearms, history has shown us that any control in that arena just never ends up good for anybody.
Mm-hmm. And the reason that an FFL license holder would have to even document that, what's the purpose behind that?
Their idea is, so if, say, a firearm was found at a crime, they're able to conduct a trace on it, where they can basically go, hey, okay, Joe Blow here, we found this thing, and we looked it up, and it was manufactured by Colt. Okay, well, we go to Colt, and Colt tells us that they sent it to this wholesaler. This wholesaler sent it to this dealer. This dealer, we reached out to him, and they gave us a copy of the 4473, the background check form. And it says that they sold it to, Mike Smith. Well, Mike Smith, we call him up now, and we can find out, through that trace, the path that firearm took to get to where it was. And ultimately, it's okay. You're not tracking what everybody has at that point. You're tracking what was used in a crime. So it's already something that's not where it should be.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine that most of the problem, the focus of the problem, should be on what happened during the crime.
Exactly.
Who had it when the crime was committed, not who sold it to them.
Right, and that's where the way the ATF is kind of going after FFLs, it's almost one of those things that it looks obvious to the point of you guys are just trying to get some kind of almost a registry type deal of what is out there. And with a lot of the power of these computers nowadays, it's not too far out of the imagination to think that they could put something like that together.
Right.
Just, if you turn around, if you get my books, you have all that information in a scan, real quick of who has what, and that's got people on
scary.
edge. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk to David about his question, but stay tuned. We got more to say.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.